Welcome, everyone, to the Fantastics Inside of Baseball podcast for today. Skylar, how you doing? We've been bemoaning our schedule.
Yeah, I mean,
it is what
it is, man. And I hate that saying, but what are you going to do?
I know, right? And this is for our purposes here. This is a particularly tough time of year, and people are going to get sick of us whining about it. I understand, but it's tough because we're in between what we can do. We can't really do much with the statistics that we have. And Brandon and I last week just looked at some guys who traditionally have good Aprils and things like that, so we can look back a little bit. So we're kind of in between. We can't really. It's kind of past the point where we can look back, but it's kind of before the point we can look forward. So we're just going to take a look at some hot guys and see. And it's my favorite question, right? What changed? If a guy's particularly hot or he's outperforming his historical norms, we're looking at what's changed and can we find some substantiation for it, I guess is what we're looking for, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point in the year, and I said this, I went on with Ariel Cohen last week, and you and I talked about this the week before that. You can't you do 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks of draft prep, auction prep, and then you watch like 6 games and throw all that out the window. It just doesn't even make sense. So what we're doing now is taking a dozen games worth of data, or for pitchers, 2 or 3 starts, and we're kind of gradually milking that into what our preconceived notions are about players and see if there's anything different. If it is, what is it sustainable? And over the next 2, 3, 4 weeks, we'll be able to actually start making some judgments on the set of data that we have for this year. For now, it's just barely moving the needle on what we already thought, in my opinion.
But for us, the problem here is for us, we have to do a show today. And for you people out there, for all of us playing fantasy baseball, we have to make claims today. We have to make claims tomorrow. We have to make decisions now. So we're kind of forced into the situation where we have to look at this kind of seriously. You can't just sit back and say, "Oh, it's too early."
No, certainly not. And there are instances, particularly with pitchers, I think, that things have changed, and you can measure it, you can verify it. I mean, you get a guy with a 1.5 to 2 mile an hour velocity bump. Yeah. That's a big deal. You get a guy that all of a sudden has cut his walk rate for 3 starts by 2/3, and that applies to one pitcher in particular that's on this list, by the way. Both of those things, it could be a big deal. So, you do have some data that works. All of a sudden, you've got guys that, launch angle is vastly different, or, the barrel rate is like 5 times. So, all right, now we're talking about a half dozen events. That stuff may be a little less applicable in terms of changing opinions. But yeah, there's things that we can verify now.
And with pitchers, especially starting pitchers, our sample size is a little bit bigger. We're doing about 3 starts, which is more than 10% of what they're probably going to put up on the season, which is equivalent to 50, 60 at bats for a hitter, which is a little bit more substantial for a sample size.
Yeah, I think so. And by the time we do this next week, I think we can start looking at swing percentage, aggressiveness, because that tends to stabilize pretty early. And they're already I'm already starting to map out some guys that we can talk about next week that already appear to be either less aggressive or more aggressive, and it can help or hurt, depending on the situation.
Yeah, and we can watch the raw power to game power type of conversion, especially for younger players. We're looking at pull rate, we're looking at lift rate, things like that, and see whether their approach has changed from their initial season or their initial half season, whether they're feeling more comfortable and reverting to the type of, just bringing the power into the game a little bit more.
Yep. That is another thing, definitely. And particularly in that age category, 22 to 26 or so, where you tend to get that last little bump of strength.
Which leads us inadvertently, I didn't mean it that way, into Tyler Soderstrom, who is off to a great start. And I've already picked up Tyler, and I've already I've picked up Tyler and Torkelson. I've kind of turned over my first base entirely together because, first base is such a tough situation. I got there late because that's by design. At a certain point, if you're not getting the elite guys, you're back into the pack. And so I've already changed up the pack. It's kind of working out okay. And I think this is something you're going to have to do at first base.
Yeah, I think so as well. And especially because we talked about all preseason, there's basically no one at first base that steals bases. Although the third guy on our list, I think we are going to want to talk about a little bit in that respect too. But with Tyler Soderstrom, he's only 23 and he's already shown very, very good power in the minors. 3 years ago, almost 30 homers across 3 levels in the minors, clearly has very good power. and he is absolutely a lift guy, but less than you'd think last year. I think he was a little more contact-centric last year in his first real exposure to the majors. Ground ball rate was a little high. Pull rate was very low. It was lower than anything he'd ever shown in the minors.
Right.
I think he was really trying to focus on not striking out all the time. So this year, he is pulling the ball quite a bit more. Still doesn't hit the ball a ton in the air, but enough. He's already got 6 homers. But the big thing for me is the swinging strike rate is dropped to something that is lower than just about anything he put up in the minors. So if there have been true contact gains here, which I don't think we could say that for sure yet, but he is a patient hitter. He definitely has well above average power. The exit velocity last year was 92. This year, almost 92 and a half. Barrel rates 18%, a little bit above last year's. Hard hit rates 50%, a little bit above last year's. Last year, though, I think people are going to look at the home run numbers, 9 in, we'll say 35%, about a third of a season, a little more. And they're going to think, oh, well, he's maybe a 20 to 25 homer guy. I don't think so. I think he's more of a 30 homer guy. And he was really shorted last year. If you look at the StatCast expected data, he was shorted about 50 points of slugging. And the park situation definitely a little more friendly for him this year. Mm-hmm. Sacramento's, it looks like it may actually be a positive homer park. It certainly won't be a huge negative like the Mausoleum was. So I think that pretty safe to say 25 to 30 homers for Soderstrom this year is a reasonable target. And if these contact gains last, which get back to me in like 2 weeks, but I think the batting average may be less of an issue than it would be otherwise. He is definitely, if he's going to be a huge power hitter, that average is probably not going to be great because he's not very fast and he hits the ball in the air more and more. So I like him. I think most of this is for real, but I don't think he's going to be a game changer at first.
Now, I think part of this is played, and you mentioned it. Part of it is him getting more comfortable and putting more power into his game a little bit. Part of it is the ballpark, because I think he feels more comfortable. Probably felt he needed to be a little bit more of a contact guy in Oakland than he has to be in Sacramento. But the exciting part is the gains in the plate rates and the contact and swinging strike percentage and chase rate and things like that. That's exciting with his power, because if those gains are real, as you said, then that means we've got a power plate approach type of guy, which is the next best thing to a power speed type of guy. And I think you're right. We're going to have to wait a little bit, because what's going to happen is pitchers are going to adjust. Teams are going to adjust to him, try to find a hole in him and see if he can adjust back. But he's already, 362 at bats in, not enough to really dig into this too much. But that's the really exciting part, the difference in the plate rates.
It definitely is. And I think, when you're looking at dynasty formats and things like that, a potential move to an even more favorable hitting environment in Vegas in a couple of years, Soderstrom could be a nice dynasty target right now if you can find somebody that doesn't really buy into these gains. I would suggest that he looks like a clear 30-plus homer hitter to me in his peak. And with the plate discipline that he has in an OBP-based format, I think he's going to be a really solid OBP/power guy. The average probably never going to be great, I don't think. But first base has a whole lot of options that are pretty similar, and I would assume the acquisition cost on Soderstrom is still pretty low.
Yeah, still one of the bargains, and prices will never be lower for him at this point. The batting average, if he just eliminates strikeouts, if the contact rates stay up and the strikeouts cut down to sub 20%, which is where he's at right now, then the batting average could be at least minor plus at this point. It's just if he can cut down the amount of strikeouts in his game.
Yeah, that's the thing. And he has shown a below average swing strike rate so far through like 13 games. That's better than anything he ever showed in the minor league. So I'm quite a bit skeptical as far as that goes. I think, like you said, pitchers will adjust. We'll see how that impacts him. But if he can just move up into the average range for contact, I think that's going to be a huge boost for his value.
And 75%, if you can maintain that, then we might have something really special on our hands.
Without question, yes.
All right, I'm interested in your take on Wilyer Abreu, because I have to kind of recuse myself because I'm in this whole Boston bubble here. But I hadn't really bought into this point either, though. But he's just impressive. He's just day-to-day, he's impressive.
I thought he was good last year. The raw numbers didn't really bear it out too much, but the exit velocity and the max exit velocity were both very, very good. And he does hit some line drives. He's not a strictly like elevation and pull guy. And he's been making strides. You see the contact rate continue to improve. And so far this year, again, 13 games. But this year, massive improvements in contact rate. He's always been a very disciplined hitter at the plate. He's taken that to a new level this year. The chase rate is 16%. That's just unbelievable. And he has a little bit of speed. And at this point, not that this means anything in the grand scheme of things, but the defense, his arm is terrific. Everybody's just raving about that throw he made to third base the other day, reminiscent of Vlad or Ichiro or any of the best throws that you've seen from the right field wall. I think he's a very, very good, still underrated player. I really like Wilyer Abreu a lot.
What we're seeing here is kind of the opposite of Soderstrom, where we knew he was had a pretty good plate approach and controlled the strike zone and made contact pretty well. But the power numbers to this point, and it's small sample, we got to keep disclaiming this, but the power numbers are just really impressive. Do you have his max exit velocity there?
Last year's max was 114.5.
Yeah.
This year, only 111 so far, but it's rare to see maxes extremely high in the early going because, as you and I both know, the weather sucks.
Yes.
We're getting snow in about half an hour. Again,
right.
We had 2 inches on Tuesday, and we'll probably get another inch today. So
yeah, we had ice puddles yesterday. So and the Red Sox played in that game, and he's done Fenway and he's done Baltimore, and the weather wasn't great in Baltimore either, so he hasn't seen the good weather yet. And so these quality of contact numbers are pretty impressive.
They really are. I got people calling me from South Carolina yesterday saying, we had a frost delay before our tee time today. Shut up, all right? I can't play golf for 3 weeks because it's going to snow at least once a week, so just stop talking.
Yeah, exactly. It's first world problems, huh?
Yeah, right, exactly.
But see, this is different from Soderstrom, is that we were looking for pitchers to make an adjustment to Soderstrom and see if his plate rates hold. Wilyer Abreu has performed decent plate rates all along. I don't know what the adjustment is for his power at this point. If he's gonna exhibit more power, he's gonna exhibit more power.
Well, I think with Abreu, I think it's just getting the lift and the pull a little more consistently when it's a pitch that he can handle. And these are the reasons we don't talk about specifics, but when you say, and this is a big thing of yours, 1,000 to 1,500 major league plate appearances before you really get players comfortable in the batter's box, those are some of the specific instances as to why you would say that. When hitters can understand, okay, this pitch is coming in that split second and I can handle this, I need to elevate and pull this. These are the things that hitters learn over 2 to 3 years instead of, all right, make contact.
Wilyer Abreu is complicating the whole Roman Anthony, Marcelo Meyer thing to a huge degree.
Well, he is, and Kristian Campbell is. The fact that these guys are coming up and performing very well, maybe even above expectations, creates more of those first world type of problems where, you've got too many mouths to feed. Okay, but, don't do what Baltimore did and not trade any of them.
Because Kristian Campbell fit a slot. Roman Anthony doesn't fit a slot right now. Marcelo Meyer doesn't. We all assumed, or I assumed anyway, it's just going to be a matter of Trevor Story gets hurt and Marcelo Meyer comes up and plays shortstop. But that blocks Roman Anthony. And I think the thing here is Ceddanne Rafaela has struggled offensively, but he could fill in at shortstop if Trevor Story goes down. But Roman Anthony's not a center fielder. So what do we do at this point? That's where Wilyer Abreu really complicates situations because he keeps one of the corner outfield slots. And you got Duran and Abreu who can't be moved at this point. And Roman Anthony, I don't think fits as a center fielder.
I don't think so either, especially in Fenway with its quirky outfield. I think that you really need somebody that can cover a lot of ground out there. Certainly less so in left field. And Wilyer, you're going to want to keep it right because of that fantastic arm. So it is a good problem, but it is still a problem. And I would not be at all surprised if Ceddanne Rafaela ends up being sort of a super utility guy for them and doesn't start but plays 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a matter of when Trevor Story goes down, and it's not a if, it's when he goes down, who's going to be the promotion and how they're going to make that work.
If Meyer and Anthony are deemed ready, then I think that you end up trying to peddle Trevor Story. I mean, there's no reason for him to be on that team.
So this is the problem, though, because I think Marcelo Meyer, because of his injury history and all the time he's missed, I think they want him to see some time at AAA. I think they want him to see some regular bats and get established. He's been terrific. He's been terrific this year. He had a great camp. He's been terrific for the Woo Sox, which is basically Coors East at this point where they play. And he's been terrific to this point, but I really think they want to see him get 250, 300 at-bats in AAA this year if they can. That's my guess on what I think they want to do. But
I agree with you.
The hand.
Yeah, but Ceddanne gives you that kind of latitude, that security blanket there that you don't need to push Meyer yet. And you could still, you get towards It depends on where they are in the race, of course, but you get towards June, July, around the All-Star break. And if Meyer is performing well, then you bring him up, you split time with Meyer and Rafaela at short, and you pedal Trevor Story, get a pitcher at the deadline. I think it makes the team better.
Oh, I would be surprised if Trevor Story doesn't move at the deadline. Yeah. Injury or no injury.
Could go back to Colorado.
It'd be a good reuniting right there.
Yeah, I agree.
Ben Rice with the Yankees is a guy who's sitting around, speaking of first base, he's a guy that is sitting around tempting people.
People keep waiting for Ben Rice to turn back into a pumpkin, and I'm not seeing him. And I've watched more than half of his at-bats so far this year because, as I mentioned, it snows all the time here. So I'm just watching baseball and pining for real spring, which shows up here about May 10th usually.
Yep.
He looks really good. Batting at the top of that lineup, first of all, big bump to his value because perceived for Ben Rice was going to be batting at the bottom of the order, and he is batting at the top of the order against right-handed pitching. That's a giant boost right there.
Yep.
Ben Rice, great exit velocities, not just in the minors, but this year he's among the league leaders in every single category. 72% hard hit rate or something like that so far. It's been really impressive. And as a former catcher, and he still could get catching time this year in an emergency situation. So that would be absolutely ideal if he could somehow get catcher eligibility again for next year.
Can you imagine?
But he looks great. And the biggest kicker, we talked about this all spring. We just mentioned it a few minutes ago. First base, nobody steals bases.
Yep.
Ben Rice already has a couple steals. And even as a former catcher and a first baseman and a guy that's perceived as a bit of a plotter, his speed is more average minus than it is poor.
Yeah.
So 10 to 15 steals out of that leadoff spot would not be out of the question, I don't think. And top 25 first baseman last year drafted in the spring. One guy stole 10 bases. So that's given you a nice little bump on the competition there for a guy that has excellent plate discipline, excellent exit velocities, and is the top of a very good lineup. Yeah, so I'm not seeing the fall off here. I think he's very good.
Power plate approach, a little bit of speed. This is why it's tricky projecting speed, because he is not a true outright speed guy, but that doesn't always win the day in the major leagues. And I think, and I've said it before, this is the biggest jump from the minor leagues to the major leagues is the speed game and stealing bases. Part of it is speed. There's no doubt about it. But especially nowadays with the rule change the last couple of years, there's a baseball IQ, there's a baseball savvy to stealing too. And Ben Rice has it.
He does. And I think, again, I keep coming back to this, but I think being a former catcher helps all players as far as plate discipline, as far as being aware of when you can and cannot run. Just general offensive awareness, I guess, would be the category that you'd put it in. And I think most of those catchers, they pay attention to that stuff a little more than some of the guys in the outfield. I mean, in the outfield, you can fall asleep for a while, depending on who's pitching. Logan Webb's pitching, you could probably put a lawn chair out there.
All right, Kyren Paris is the guy who he's the hottest. He's got the most helium in baseball right now.
Yeah. All right. So my opinion here is moving a little, but I think I'm still more in the cynical camp on his start than anything else. He went and saw Aaron Judge's hitting coach in the offseason, and people get all excited about stuff like this. But all right. One of these guys is 6'7", 260, and the other guy is Kyren Paris. So I'm not going to sit here and say that Kyren Paris is going to maintain the kind of barrel rate that he's shown through a dozen games. I think that the exit velocity and the raw power are definitely below average.
Yep.
And I'm well aware that he already he had 2 more homers last night, so that's 5, I think now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see him getting above 20. I don't. The speed is great, but the contact issues are significant. And we've seen this a million times over the years. You've got a guy that really kind of a slightly built guy, and people don't see him as a big power threat. So you're throwing him some cookies and, he hits 5 homers in the first 2 weeks. All right, maybe he's on a complete pushover. Let's not throw him fastballs down the middle.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden the guy goes into a 3-week slump. I think that there are even odds that Kyren Paris is back in AAA by the All-Star break, or that he hits 20 home runs this year. So do you want to mortgage a 5th or a 4th or whatever of your fab budget for the year, or, go crazy on a guy, admittedly, that's 23 and has made some gains, but I'm just skeptical. I'm skeptical.
Yeah, and the speed, you talk about the speed game, which we'll give him at this point if he can get on base. speed game isn't great. It isn't elite. It isn't Ellie De La Cruz type elite where you can put up with a low batting average. Ellie De La Cruz has power too. There's no evidence his power is sustainable at this point. This is what we're looking for. The result stats are telling us a different story than the indicator stats are telling us. And I think it's something we need to pay attention to, because his barrel rate and his hard hit rate have been great. He's been making great contact, but exit velocities tell me a different story, and this is going to level out.
Well, they do, and he's never had a max exit velocity above average. And I mean, yeah, we're talking about 78 balls that he has actually hit in the major leagues. So the sample size here is still unbelievably small. But, you know, you look at these the contact numbers, not just in the majors, but in the minor leagues, and he has some pretty massive contact issues. I mean, the lowest swing strike rate that he's ever put up is 10% in rookie ball 6 years ago. Other than that, you see a whole bunch of mid-teens. Yes, he does not chase a lot, and that bodes well. But, you know, that works a lot better for somebody like Aaron Judge that is going to pummel any mistake than a guy like Kyren Paris that has, at best, average raw power, probably less than that.
Yep. And again, the plate rates, especially so far this year, none of this adds up. If you were just looking at different parts of his line at this point, it wouldn't make sense, because the hard hit rate, the barrel rate don't line up with the exit velocity. Swinging strike rate and the batting average don't line up. You know, his plate rates and things like that tell you, again, it's all telling you a different story. So just be cautious. Don't go super nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Kyren Paris has to hit the ball perfectly to get it out of the yard. Aaron Judge just has to sort of hit it. So,
and I'm betting you put up the proposal before earlier in this. My bet would be at some point he's going back to the minors.
When Zach Neto is fully healthy, you know, it just squeezes it that much more. And even the best of players will go, even they start with a hot streak and pitchers adjust, and they have to adjust back. The more talent you have, the easier it is to adjust. And Kyren Paris, I mean, he may have some raw talent, but I just don't see the kind of power that people are projecting from this kid. Everybody can have a hot 2 weeks. If this happened in July, nobody would think about it. But because it's April and we have so little to talk about, everybody wants to talk about Kyren Paris.
And early on,
I'm letting somebody else do it.
Early on, they just challenge young hitters, especially before they try to start, before they're forced to figure out how to approach him. And at this point, what we've seen in the minor leagues is that he'll chase a little bit. So, you know, don't just challenge him. You know, make him dig a little bit for it.
He'll swing and miss. He doesn't chase a ton, but he will swing and miss through things that, you know, he's max swinging because he knows that he has to hit it perfectly to get it out of the yard. So I'm, you know, there are guys where I'm confident, but like you say, especially prospects coming up without a power pedigree, they're going to get challenged. And when they make pitchers pay, the adjustments get made. So I fully expect a slump.
Here's the proof. So far in 2025, 53% fastball rate. He's not going to see that.
No, definitely not. Because most guys only see like 38% anymore.
Yeah. I mean, baseball doesn't want to be at 53% at all, anywhere. So it's just a matter of, well, what do we do with this kid? Well, let's throw a fastball, see if he can hit it. And so far, he's done a little bit of damage. So that's going to back down. I'm guessing we'll see very soon that 53% in the fastball rate just slow down considerably.
I think so, too. When you look at that lineup, there's not a ton of protection for him. So if they start pitching around him, there's plenty of other options. It's not like with the Yanks or with the Red Sox or one of the higher scoring teams where you kind of need to challenge guys of that stature.
Yeah, and pitching around is a little strong. I don't think they're going to pitch around. But again, they're not going to just, you know.
They're not going to throw him a cookie.
Here it is, kids. See if you can hit it. That's not going to be the approach anymore. And by the way, even if he's just hot, teams are going to look at it. Well, he's just hot right now. Let's give him something else to look at.
Definitely.
Right. Kyle Tucker, good start with the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, and I think that this actually is turning into a really good situation for him, I think. You know, Wrigley, once we get into the summertime, Wrigley's going to be a significant park upgrade for him over whatever the heck they're calling Houston's ballpark anymore. Changes every year, I think. But the reason I put Tucker on this list, and there are a ton of hot guys, and we could talk about a million different people right now. I think that there is a very reasonable chance that Kyle Tucker could be the number one hitter for fantasy this year. And he's close. He just always seems to get hurt. So the health concerns are really where it's at for me. He's got above average power, above average plate discipline, above average contact rate, above average speed. You know, everything is great for this guy. He could be a 40-40 player. I think he's just a wonderful hitter. And he's now, you know, age 28. He's in his prime. So if Kyle Tucker is a number one, you know what? I'm just going to say I think Kyle Tucker will be the number one player offensively this year.
Yeah, but everything would have to come together. Not that he's not going to be a top 10 or a top 15. Certainly he's going to be an excellent hitter in the majors, but just that staying healthy and accumulating enough at bats to be the number one hitter is going to be a lot. And then things are going to have to go well for him. I just think it's interesting that, again, we're in April, he's in Chicago, and still these numbers are what they are at this point. So it's only going to get better when the weather gets better, as long as he can stay healthy at the right time.
Exactly. I think, Chicago really, it's been a negative park so far because the entire upper Midwest and Northeast is just mired in this awful, like barely out of winter, or in my case, still in winter weather pattern that is not conducive to hitting. I mean, I watched the Yankees Tigers game the other day, and there were guys that were dressed in snowsuits. Like it was ridiculous. You could only see their eyes. They had the whole full head coverings, and it's not good to hit in this weather.
Yeah, that was the case in this Toronto Red Sox series. A lot of ski masks, a lot of snorkel masks, or whatever they're doing there, just trying to keep warm. Players are being affected by it.
There aren't a lot of guys around baseball that grow up in cold climates, to be perfectly honest, because a lot of the guys are either from the islands or from Central America, or certainly from Florida and California, where you're not seeing 32 and drizzle very often.
And it's an old boomer lament, but it's really easy to schedule at this point, where you could schedule into some decent weather and give everybody a chance at this point.
Yeah.
I don't
I know
understand.
you wanted to have the home opener in the first 2 weeks, but you don't have to have like 4 series there.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And the weather has been brutal. This reminds me of a few years ago where May was just really brutal too. Okay. And we may be running into that as well, because April it's basically February 69th at this point here where we are.
It's what it feels like to me. I mean, I looked at the 10-day forecast, and it looks like 8 days from now, it's going to snow another 2 to 3 inches. Like, we're just not getting out of this. So I don't know.
All right, Kristian Campbell, how legitimate is his hype to this point? He's had a really good start. He had a really good start in the first series, and that really got everybody excited.
Well, I want to hear your take here first, because I think you probably have a little more info on Campbell than I do. I have some numbers and I can talk, but
what I've seen to this point looks legitimate. Like the eyeball test, just sitting there, and he looks comfortable at the plate. He doesn't look overmatched. And of course, his plate discipline is great. The statistics back it up, but the quality of contact doesn't, again, tell the same story as the result stats to this point. He looks good. This is the big thing I look for with kids. Are they overwhelmed? Are they overmatched? Are they over their head with it? And he's certainly not. He's comfortable where he is right now, and the good start helped him a lot to that point. I wouldn't be going nuts. I wouldn't be buying high at this point, but I think this start is fairly legitimate.
I would agree. Last year, 115 games down in the minors, and he hit .330, 2024. Mm-hmm. If you told me he was going to be a 2020 guy this year, I'd say that might be giving him a little too much credit for the power. I think there's still much more raw power than there is game power with Campbell. He's still learning.
Yeah.
He's a young player. He's only 22. And I think that ultimately, I think he will be an across-the-board offensive talent. I think the power numbers, you might struggle to get more than average plus this year from him, but he's got good speed. He has good plate discipline. Contact rates are pretty good. I mean, they're a little better than average. Yep. So I really like him. I think that most of this start is legitimate. And hey, the world is always better when the Red Sox are good. So I think it's nice to see these young kids coming up and producing with what looks like legitimate skill sets.
It's fun for us, isn't it, when the Red Sox and Yankees in June mean something, and the Red Sox and Yankees in August and September mean something.
I actually love it when all 5 teams are good. I think that just the AL East is, in my opinion, consistently the best division in baseball. And I like seeing it that way. It's, they're all teams, with the exception of Tampa, which doesn't really count. But the other 4 teams are all places that I can get to very easily. If I want to go watch games, it's awesome. Obviously, I've seen them a ton on TV, so I really enjoy it whenever team is good.
I don't think Kristian Campbell is 2020, at least not a lot, but he's 15-15. So I'm thinking high floor. I'm thinking don't get overwhelmed with the ceiling. In other words, don't think that there's a superstar in the making there, because I don't think he is. But he's a floor 15-15 guy, and we'll give you a few more stolen bases than that, I think.
Yeah, I think within 3 years, I think he's 2020 pretty consistently. Yep. And I think that the batting average will be a help too, because he has good plate discipline and above average contact ability. So since he's not a big elevation and pull guy, I think the average will end up being a help too. I think he's going to be an across the board help, possibly as soon as this year, but I think the power may lag behind a little bit.
We're waiting for the arrival of Wyatt Langford, and we're going to deal with an injury at this point, of course, too. But the power has been there so far in the season, and that's kind of masked the fact that otherwise,
Yeah, I mean, he's got some good speed too. He is an athletic guy, but the problem is that an oblique injury, and this could persist for a while. And he just went on the IL yesterday. Be surprised if we see him again much before the end of the month. And people really got impressed last spring with his power and the power potential, but I only see kind of above average power here. And I think that he really needs the fly ball pull part of it to get to it, which of course is negatively impactful on the average. So I like Wyatt Langford, but I don't love him. And I really feel like there are enough people around that love him that I'm probably a net seller.
And the thing about this is, the thing that worries me about Langford is he buys into being a power guy. If he wants to be a power guy, as you said, he had that lift and pull, and it drains the rest of his assets here. I don't think he can try to go be a 35 home run guy. I want him to play at a different level.
I don't think he can be a 35
I don't
home
think he
run
can
guy.
be. Well,
I think he's a 20 home run guy, and he might be able to get to 15 steals or so.
Yeah.
I think the average is more likely to be neutral than anything else. If he's trying to stretch to get to 30 homers, I think the average is going to be a hurt. And that lineup is pretty good. So the counting stats probably pretty good, but he's been injury prone too. And when a guy's injury prone at 23, that tends to not get better as time goes by. So I feel like he's just a little overvalued. The hype machine continues to push him, and I'm seeing enough problems where I'm probably just not going to be an acquirer.
500 at bats last year, 16 homers, 19 stolen bases, 74 and runs and RBIs. That's about what you should be looking for, and that's about what you should be paying for.
Yep,
he can
probably
get a little bit better than that, but that's basically what I want him to be.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think so. Yeah. And perfectly solid player, but a superstar like has been talked about off and on both last year and this year. I'm not seeing it.
All right. Speaking of budding superstars, Cedric Mullins. And again, I'm 1 year off with Cedric Mullins.
Come on now, Cedric Mullins. He has these starts every like 3 years or so. He's 30 now. So Ced Mullins is, and you can quote me on this, he is a below average power guy. I'm sorry, but he is.
Yep.
All the exit velocities bear this out. He is completely reliant on the Brian Dozier, Jose Altuve method of hitting the ball down the line and pulling in the air. That's how he gets his homers. These kind of guys, every time they try to ramp up the power, their batting average will suffer 9 times out of 10. So he's a good contact hitter. He's been less aggressive this year, which I think might be good for him. He does have good plate discipline in general. And I think he really needs to pick his spots instead of just trying to yank every ball into the right field seats. I think that, this is another situation. I know he doesn't hit the ball the other way a lot, but I think that a lot of these Oriole hitters are going to be more comfortable with that left field fence coming back in.
Yeah.
Instead of them saying, I hit the ball great. I can't get it out to left field, especially for a guy like Mullins that average is probably giving him a lot of credit in terms of power. Still has good speed. Mullins is a perfectly good player, and I like him better when he's not trying to hit a ton of homers, which it seems that way this year, than when he is. But obviously, this is just a really hot start, and I do not mind selling high here.
And there's a lot of pull in his game this year, and you wonder how much of that has to do with the ballpark adjustment. And it hasn't been great weather in Baltimore either. So,
no.
But I think that left field is much more enticing for some of these hitters. I'm interested to see how he reacts long term. Guys like Ryan Mountcastle, I'm interested to see how he reacts long term to it and whether they get pulled into trying to pull the ball too much. Cedric Mullins shouldn't be pulling the ball at 47% like he's doing now.
No, but he fell in love with home runs the year he hit 30. And this happens to a lot of guys. I really think that it's a negative impact to have that one really hot year.
That 130 homer year has changes our perception strongly. It often, as you pointed out, just pointed out, changes the player's perception of himself too.
Exactly. I mean, you think that all of a sudden you're going to be a 20 to 30 home run hitter, and I just don't think that's his game. So it'd be good to see him revert back a little bit. And by the way, speaking of that left field fence in Baltimore, it definitely upgraded Tyler O'Neill in my mind. I think that he is a big fly ball pull guy, and that's going to help him tremendously.
I think Tyler O'Neill is going to be a sneaky value this year.
I agree, but the question, as always, like we've spoken about multiple times with this hot hitter list, is how many games can he play? Because that dude is always dinged up.
Yeah, as jacked as he is, he's always dinged up.
Yeah, well, a lot of those guys that are really tightly wound like that, that is not a body type that stays healthy that much. And we talked about this a couple of years ago with Aaron Judge.
Right.
When he switched from strength training to Pilates and yoga, people laugh, but that has kept him healthy.
Exactly what he needed. Exactly what he needed.
Exactly. Because he's strong enough to get it out. He didn't need one more exit velocity mile an hour. I mean, come on.
No, I hate to bring back Tom Brady and the pliability word, but there are certain athletes where it's a huge factor.
Flexibility is more important than raw strength.
Especially when you've got basic raw power too.
Well, I mean, when you're a Greek god of a man like Aaron Judge, sure.
Yeah. All right. So I want to start pitching. I want to go with Hunter Greene. I'm going to skip over Gore for a second. We'll go to Gore because on the ride in today to do the show, I heard a little betting promo, and some guy picked Hunter Greene at plus 600 to be the best bet for National League Cy Young this year.
He's only plus 600?
Only
plus. I wonder what he was 2 weeks ago.
I wonder where he was 2 weeks ago. Exactly. Right.
Like plus 3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I mean, plus 600. Is that enough to entice you, Hunter Greene, for
no? That's too low odds because as the weather warms up, he allows a ton of fly balls, and that park is difficult to pitch in. So there will probably be some flammable outings. But I have more Hunter Greene than I ever in my life thought that I would have, and I am very, very pleased about that fact after watching his first 3 outings. We talked about I alluded to in the opener about pitchers that not only have made control improvements, but also have a velocity bump. And there's one guy on that list that has had a velocity bump of more than 1.5 miles per hour and has cut their walks per 9 by more than half. And that is Hunter Greene. Through 3 starts, he has walked one guy, I think in all 3 starts, maybe. So he's walking 1.3 hitters per 9, and he's been a consistent mid-3s guy in his young pro career. That has been what has held him back because he does allow a lot of fly balls. And in Cincinnati, some of those inevitably will leave the yard because it's the second best hitting park in baseball.
Right.
So that is a problem. It hasn't been a problem so far this year. And if you're only walking a guy per 9, it won't be as much of a problem for him going forward. And I think he has known that because when you look at last year's data, in the second half, he cut his walks per 9 from 3.5, 3.6 range in the first half down to 2.7 in the second half. So this was kind of foreshadowed a little bit. Not to this level, but I really didn't foresee the control going from neutral to a strength. I thought it could be neutral this year because it was in the second half last year. But if he's going to be walking less than 2 men per 9, Hunter Greene is a viable NL Cy Young candidate. The only worry here, and I've heard people talk about this a lot, and I want to address it. We've gone way too far on this. Too much velocity means the player will get injured.
Yeah.
Sure, there is some direct relationship between velocity and lack of health, but it is not concrete enough for me to say that you get a velocity bump and you're going to be hurt. I'm just not going to sign on to that method of thought, we'll say.
Right. It's not
if a guy has a velocity bump, I like it. I don't dislike it. This is years and years of data. I don't dislike velocity jumps. I think they're good.
And Hunter Greene is I keep thinking of Roger Clemens. He's got that pitcher's build to him. It's in the haunches. It's down below. He's solid, and he's got most of that velocity. You got to watch where the velocity is coming from. Is it coming from arm action? Is it coming late, or is it coming from below the waist? Is it coming from his drive? And with Hunter Greene, I think it comes from his drive. That takes a lot of stress off the arm a little bit. So I don't think every candidate is an equal candidate for a pitching injury just based on velocity.
I agree with you 100%. And I have lots of negative opinions on this predicting pitcher injuries thing because every pitcher gets hurt, every single one. We remember the ones that don't. Roger Clemens, Nolan Ryan, Bob Gibson. We remember them because they are the few outliers. Every pitcher at some point is going to have an arm injury. And call me crazy, but you're not going to be able to forecast the 1 or 2 guys that won't. You're just not. So just ignore it. It's like trying to worry about an asteroid hitting the Earth. You don't worry about stuff like that. If it happens, it happens. You can't do anything about it. So just leave it alone.
Control what you can control. Do your job, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if a guy goes from 97 3/4 to 99.5 miles an hour with his fastball and cuts his walk rate by 2/3, he is going to be good. I mean, these are just truisms in life. Okay. So Hunter Greene looks really good right now. I couldn't be more optimistic. And when he gets hurt, it's not going to be because he threw a little bit faster. It's going to be because the human body can't throw over 95 repeatedly thousands of times without something snapping.
Okay, he can strike out guys. We know that. He's controlling his walks, and it's based on the split from last year. It might be a legitimate change in his game a little bit. So we can't go early season here because he exhibited some of this at the end of last year. Giving up the home runs is another deal, though. This is what I'm curious about. We can't pay attention to the home run right now because the weather is brutal, right? So this plays up for him. This is when Hunter Greene plays up. Last year, he only gave up 0.72 homers per 9 with a 6.9% home to fly ball rate. And that's my question. Can he sustain that? Right?
Probably
That's season-long number, but still, that's what questions me. So if the walk rate's cut, this is great because his vulnerability certainly is giving up the home runs. We'll see how this happens. But if he can continue a sub 1 per 9, with that walk rate being cut and the strikeout rate the way it is, yeah, he's a Cy Young candidate.
I think even if he doesn't, the walk rate cut is the key for me. Like the guy always has missed bats, and he always has a really low ground ball rate. And in that park, it's going to be occasionally problematic. But if you're not putting on free passes in front, and he's tough to hit to begin with.
Yep.
So you give up a couple solo homers a game. I don't even care. 7 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 10 Ks. Do that 30 times, you're Cy Young.
Yep. I mean, look at the walk rate, and yet his swinging strike is 18.8 and chase rate is 40.7. It's like he's not just beating hitters, he's fooling.
He's been filthy so far. But again, his last start, he pitched in San Francisco. Okay, I mean, and that actually, one of the next couple of guys on our list was in that game too. So I'll just leave that. But that was I was watching that game as closely as I could on StatCast. Like I was trying to write while I was watching it, but I was just kind of like watching it, and I throw in a player comment in 2 minutes and then go back to watching it. It was a great game, great pitchers duel, stuff you love to watch. He looks great, man. I can't speak more highly of a pitcher so far this year.
So it's easy to ignore. Don't take it too easy to ignore that walk rate change because it's this year and it's early season, it's small sample. He was exhibiting some of this at the end of last year as well. So this looks like a legitimate gain at this point.
That's what I'm talking about when I talk about like gradually seeping this year's data into your already existing perceptions. We looked at Hunter Greene. We had him rated much more highly than most people did in the preseason, and it was because of that second half improvement in walk rate. I think we are all on board, Anthony, you, Brandon, myself, as far as the 3 pillars of starting pitching. The walk rate has become the most critical. With the stolen base rule changes and with the constant barrage of home runs, not putting free guys on base is huge.
Well, we drafted that out, the 3 pillars, and Anthony went in and looked at it and did the regression, and the cause and effect, the closest cause and effect is the walk rate and ERA.
Yep.
That's why it's probably the most important aspect of those 3 pillars.
So when you see those massive control improvements going from season to season, we saw it during 2024, and now we're seeing another step forward so far in 25. So we can't forecast out, 3 starts. You're not going to say that Hunter Greene is definitely going to have a walk rate under 1.5. But if it could be in the 2 range or even 2.25, it's just such a significant improvement for a guy that already does what we love seeing, which is strikeout batters.
Yeah.
The control improvement combined with that is just, it's so significant. I can't quantify it enough. This is huge.
All right, which leads us to MacKenzie Gore. And MacKenzie Gore, there's a lot of small sample issues here because that first start was really good and is going to skew these numbers to an extent. Here's the thing, though. His walk rate has been cut, too. That's encouraging. Quality of contact is giving up as more, though. He's striking out more guys. He's walking less guys. Quality of contact's a little worse. How do we piece this all together?
Well, can we call him a poor man's Hunter Greene? Is that demeaning him too much? Because I think that he has made control gains also. And this has always been the thing with Gore. He went through a stretch last year, early-ish in the season, where he was virtually unhittable because he was throwing that curveball for strikes, or at least enough that people had to offer at it. His curve is terrific. and he's got enough velocity from the left side that it's well above average fastball. MacKenzie Gore, I think, is a great pitcher, but the control improvements Hunter Greene looks unhittable right now.
Yeah.
MacKenzie Gore looks like that on occasion. He got the Braves in his first start. The Braves are not the Braves right now. I don't think they will be, maybe even if Ronald Acuna comes back fully healthy in a couple weeks. But in fact, he still may be almost a month away, to be honest with you, which is why I really just didn't get any shares of him.
This is such a tough adjustment, isn't it? Because I'm looking at probable starts and looking forward, and I see the Braves and I see Houston, and I get a little nervous. And I go, really shouldn't be.
Oh, no. Houston in particular.
Yeah.
If Houston finished third or fourth in the West this year, I would not be surprised.
Yeah, I know, but it takes a whole rewiring of our whole thought process at this point.
We get these all of us do this. We get built-in opinions, and it takes a long time for them to shift, longer than it should. The Braves are
never going to be bad. Houston's never going to be bad, right?
The Braves are 29th in offense. Yeah. They're tied for 29th, so they're tied for last.
Yeah. With
the Rockies. And I don't think anybody is looking at the Braves and the Rockies and saying these two lineups are equivalent.
Right.
So, but they just don't have a lot right now. And, I was trying to find a cheap Brave to use yesterday for one of my DFS lineups. And I'm like, Orlando Arcia? He's still playing?
I know, right? He's still alive?
Yeah. So, he got them in his first start, which he was dominant. 1 hit, 6 innings, no runs, 13 Ks. That is going to color his stat line for a bit.
Yeah.
But his third start, he also looked really good. The second start was more like what I'm used to seeing out of MacKenzie Gore. He struggled with the strike zone, walked a couple guys, couldn't get through more than 5 innings because the pitch count got high. And this is the MacKenzie Gore experience. He battles with the strike zone. If he doesn't have feel for his breaking pitches, he doesn't have enough else to get by. So he really needs one of those breaking pitches to be working. There are going to be days when it doesn't. So for me, MacKenzie Gore is still a third or fourth starter and a good one with a lot of upside. But he's one of those guys, unfortunately, that you can't just say, well, all right, I'll avoid him against like the Dodgers and the Yankees, but I'm going to pitch him against everybody else, because he could struggle against the Marlins, because if he can't find the strike zone, he can't find the strike zone.
Right. And again,
he has back
the walks, right? Watch the walks.
It is the thing with him. It is, because he's going to, much like Hunter Greene, these guys with very good velocity, a lot of them get hit hard when they're in the zone, especially because there's control and command. Command is within the strike zone. And MacKenzie Gore, if you don't have command, you're going to float the ball into very hittable positions on occasion, and that's just something he runs into. He is steadily improving.
And if you don't have control, and he has a history of not having control, you can almost assume you don't have command.
Yeah, generally speaking, yes. You guys can have control but not command. Generally, you can't have command and not control.
Right. Yep. So basically, if he can continue, it's the same story. If he can continue to limit the walks, he's striking out enough guys. Although, again, he's been skewed by that first start, so don't buy into that K per 9 too much or the K rate too much at this point, because it's small sample noise at this point. But quality contacts up, walks are down. That's the important thing, though.
It is for him. Where I think Hunter Greene right now is probably a top 15 starter. MacKenzie Gore, last year, I think I had around number 40. This year, I probably have him just inside the top 36, so an SP3 in 12-team formats. I think he's very good. The control is just steadily getting a little bit better all the time, but, still a little volatile.
Laying around in too many leags, even 12.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. His stuff is way too good. And
I know there's a lot of pitching. There's a lot of interesting pitching. My house league is a 12-team league. There are still guys in the waiver pool that are kind of like, oh, he's kind of interesting. And I don't know who I'm going to cut for him yet.
MacKenzie Gore's upside is so significant that I could not fathom him being on the wire in any league. I think it's crazy stuff.
Logan Webb is on the wire in nobody's league at this point, nor should he be.
No, but he's perpetually undervalued. I mean, this guy, for me, he's always kind of between 10 and 14 among starting pitchers. He's just so steady. Yes, he doesn't strike out a ton of guys. He's probably slightly below average in terms of real swing and miss stuff. But the ground ball rate is elite and the walk rate is elite. He's a horse, very likely to give you 7 innings. And again, one of these guys that every pitcher gets hurt, okay? But there are levels of likelihood for getting hurt. And Logan Webb is in the lowest level for starting pitching for me. He's just the most likely to give you a quality start every single time out. And that has value. Sure, he's not giving you elite K numbers, and people just don't want that from their SP1.
Right.
But you can get Ks all over the place. So he's a perfect undervalued candidate for your top starter because he's just so steady.
What a nice pairing Logan Webb and Dylan Cease are, right?
Oh, screw Dylan Cease.
Not buying into Dylan Cease at this point.
I mean, Dylan Cease is what Dylan Cease is. I mean, the last two starts are a perfect microcosm of Dylan Cease. He's unhittable and looks wonderful, and then he looks like he's never pitched before.
I know, right?
Well, at least I have Hunter Greene and Dylan Cease.
All right, so that brings us to Chris Bassitt, and he's the guy that we can never figure out.
Oh, I figured him out. He'll never be on any team of mine.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I was wondering.
I must say this every year. I have to put him in one of these every year because I really dislike the Chris Bassitt experience. But every year.
Wait a second. You said you had never again guys, but he's a never again guy.
I don't have never again guys. If the value is correct, if he were $3 in the auction, I would probably have him on my team. But somebody always likes the Chris Bassitt experience. So they end up with Chris Bassitt because no one else wants him. You know, the velo is down, the exit velocity is up, yet somehow the chase and swing straight are up and the ground ball rate is up so far in the early going. So all I wrote, I always write little like 3 to 8 word synopses at the end of every player that we're going to talk about.
Right.
And all I wrote for Chris Bassitt is he's 36, don't trust it.
This
we
is
have enough information about this dude. He's a 4 ERA guy.
This is early season noise, right?
Yeah. I mean, Chris Bassitt, at the end of the year, he's going to have an xFIP of probably low 4s. And he's probably going to, have an okay walk rate and not a great K rate. And he's going to have some starts where he just gets pummeled because he is generally pretty hittable. And that's just Chris Bassitt. Like, he's not horrible. He's just always a little overvalued for me.
Yeah, that's the key, right? It's not, that's what, if Chris Bassitt at a different price point would look a lot different, right? So he just seems to be always overvalued.
He does.
And now with this type of start, he's severely overvalued and it gets kind of sickening.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would be running to sell. It'll be like the market Thursday and Friday.
Yep. Running market Thursday and Friday, right? Running to sell. Kris Bubic is a guy that I bought in on a couple of Royals pitchers at this point too, as I'm trying to piece my staff together and, fix the Garrett Cole hole and even the Jacob deGrom hole at this point. So Kris Bubic, are we buying into what we're seeing here?
I am, because last year as a reliever, there were some pretty serious strides made by a guy that has pretty decent raw stuff. And yes, everyone gets a step forward as a reliever because you can kind of air it out a little more rather than having to kind of pace yourself as a starting pitcher. But the swing strike has been up for a few years now, and the control and exit velocity gains that were made last year, exit velocity heading down, control getting better. Yes, it was in relief, but I'm buying it. And when you look at his first couple starts this year, I think ditching the curveball for a slider last year, I think has been very helpful for him. And that has maintained, even increased the usage a little bit this year as a starter. And I like it. I think that there's a lot of upside here. And he's a player that's probably still available in a lot of leagues. I think there's much more upside than there would be with a lot of guys that are still on the wire with Bubic. And really, Bubic, I feel like there should be a Croatian soccer jersey with Bubic on the back. I think that it just seems, if you ever watch the Croatian national lineup, every single guy ends in IC.
Okay.
It just feels like he should be there.
What I'm seeing here is this is how the orchestration of pitching works at this point. You talked about the change from the curveball to the slider at this point. And the curveball was like 20%, less than 20% most years with him. 35% on the slider for the last 2 years, which has brought his fastball rate down to 44% and 46%, 44% last year, 46 so far this year. He doesn't throw hard. You've got to keep people off your fastball. And the slider has effectively kept people off his fastball.
Yeah, it definitely has. He needed an offering that was going to garner respect from people and make that fastball play up. And this seems to be it. It seems to be working well. He's always had a good changeup too. So that gives kind of 3 different planes and speeds for people. And I like Bubic quite a bit. And that Royals offense is nice. Maybe not much better than league average, but I think it's good enough so that the win equity could be here too.
So this is where you can pay attention, because you can look at the change in his performance and see the change in his pitch deployment and see that he's made an adjustment. And he has faith in that adjustment because that slider has gone 30+% of the time. He's throwing it a lot. So he has faith in it. It's been effective for him. So this is a legitimate change at this point. Not sure how it's going to play out, but this is something we can look at and go, maybe this is for real, because you can see support for the change in performance.
Yeah, I think so. For me, I was looking at him not as much as I should have been in retrospect in the spring. I definitely think a lot of this is for real.
And the ballpark works for him too?
Ballpark's not bad. It's, I think it's one of those double and triple parks. It's almost like a lesser Coors, much lesser, but, not a big home run park. So I think that's probably good for him, actually.
Big outfield, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's what you meant by relating it to Coors, big outfield.
Yeah.
Spencer Schwellenbach, how good is he?
I think he could be an SP1 in 12-team leagues this year. He's really good. And you look at the K numbers, and they don't jump off the chart at you, but the swing strike rate do. So, I think his velo is up. The chase and swing strike rates would lead you to believe that the K rates are going to move up more. Doesn't walk people. Ground ball rate this year has been huge through a couple starts, and it's a lot closer to what he showed in the minors. So I tend to believe that it will be up this year. I don't think he was drafted anywhere close to where he should have been. I really feel like he could be a top 12 starter.
I think this is a marker for the change in the game that we've seen. And you mentioned it. The swinging strike rate is excellent. The strikeout rate doesn't blow you away. But I think this is a situation of a pitcher that isn't trying to strike out guys. And what it's telling you, the swinging strike rate is telling you, I can when I need to, which is exactly what we're looking for. He's going to swing enough, but he's basically trying to be efficient, trying not to walk guys, not trying not to strike out guys, but that's not a big importance for him. He's trying to be efficient. This is the game now. And this is, I think, where baseball is going. I think this is why fastballs are down. I think this is why this is the guy you really want to see, the guy who's striking out enough guys. But if he really needs to get a guy out, does he have enough swing and miss to do that? The swinging strike rate says yes, he does. He's just not using it. He's not going out to strike out 10 guys in an outing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, most starting pitchers are trying to get through 6 innings. They're trying to do what they can to get through 6 innings. And there are guys like the next guy on our list where it's just not going to happen more often than it does. And it's mostly control related. And Schwellenbach has excellent control. And it looks to me like he's working on making sure that he keeps the ball down in addition to having that great control. And if you can limit walks and homers, occasionally you're going to get singled to death, but more often than not, that's going to get you deep into games. That's what your team needs you to do. And I think Schwellenbach, especially with Strider out, like he kind of became the Braves ace, right behind Chris Sale last year. I think I would take Schwellenbach over Sale for this year.
Last year in the minor leagues, 57% ground ball rate. This year, 60%. That's why he doesn't need to strike out guys. This is his game plan at this point. I don't need to strike out everybody, but when I need to strike out, I can get it, but I'm just trying to keep the ball on the ground and not walk anybody.
100%. And I really believe in what I'm seeing from him. I think that he is going to be an excellent pitcher.
So when we had the vague concept of the 3 pillars of starting pitching, and Anthony drilled it down a little bit, he went from home run rate to ground ball rate. This is the guy he's talking about at this point with the 3 pillars of starting pitching. Don't walk anybody, strike out guys when you need to, keep the ball on the ground.
And he does all 3. So that's an ace.
Yeah. And I have every faith in Atlanta pitchers.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. For 40 years now.
I have no faith in Jesus Luzardo, though.
That makes 2 of us, and I have a number of shares of Luzardo because he does fit the bill for me, especially this year with his value down somewhat. You get those 2 or 3 guys that you can count on that are every start guys, and then you litter starters 4 through 7 or 8 with upside. And Jesus Luzardo has upside. The velo is back up. The ground ball rate is up. The K rates always are really good with Luzardo. It's the control. And that park, combined with the control issues, worries everyone. That's why his value was down this offseason.
If I remember correctly, we talked about we're not taking any of the Miami pitchers, especially Luzardo, outside of Miami. And now you've stuck this kid in Philadelphia.
Yeah, which is, maybe the fourth or fifth worst place for someone to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I love Luzardo, and I'm happy to use him as a spot starter. But there are going to be matchups where I'm just not interested in that bandbox because he does walk too many guys.
Yeah, and it's not so much that he even gives up a ton of homers. He hasn't really given up a ton of homers, but there's too many free runners. That's just too many free bases.
Yeah, and occasionally in that park, a fly ball is going to go out.
And we've seen no gains in that so far this year. He's walking 3/9. That's not where you want to be with him. He's striking out a ton of guys, so that's helping him at this point, keeping the ball in the ballpark. But it's April, so we can't deal with that a little bit. Philadelphia is going to play a lot differently in June than it is in April.
So. Yeah, and I think we're always pushed into either buying and holding or we're selling this guy high. But I think Luzardo is exactly what I expect Luzardo to be. He is a spot starter for me. There are going to be weeks when he looks like a play. And sometimes that won't work out because he walks guys, and he can walk AA guys as easily as he'll walk major league guys. He just doesn't have very good control. But the stuff is great. And there are going to be times when you want to use him and you take the risk. So, and there will be times when he shuts teams out. If his control is on for the day, it doesn't matter how great the other team is. He's going to shut them down. He's just a really high standard deviation pitcher.
This guy begs the question of how to deal with starting pitching throughout baseball at this point, because I think in many leagues, there are a bunch of guys on the waiver wire, a bunch of starting pitchers on the waiver wire that look promising, that look tempting. You go out there and go, oh, especially nowadays when they got 3 starts and the last one was really good, and maybe your last guy, Brandon Pfaadt, isn't pitching all that well, and you're just out there shopping, looking for a guy, and it gets sexy. Jesus Luzardo is the guy that you might consider dropping because there just seems to be a lot of options out there.
It's true, but when you're looking at upside, and I think for those starts, like starters slots 4 through 7 or 8, you want upside. You don't want floor. Like, you're not looking for Chris Bassett.
Yeah,
you're looking for Jesus Luzardo.
Yeah,
because that's what's going to win you things. You hope you choose right for when to deploy him and when not to.
But it seems like now is the prime time for streaming pitchers at this point. If you can keep a flex position on your roster where you're going to look at the upcoming week and try to find a positive start for somebody and fit them in that way, it can be done because there's a lot of good starting pitching out there. A lot of guys who could be on your roster, a lot of interchangeable starting pitching. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, 100%. And, it depends on your league rules and roster requirements and things. But for example, my Tout Wars lineup, you have 6 reserve slots, and I have 4 starting pitchers, a relief pitcher, and an outfielder.
Yeah.
That's what I have. That is my bench. Because in points leagues, pitching is everything. Hitting, you just want a base, just something that's steady and going to continue to put out a league average batting order, and good starting pitching will win you most point leagues.
Yeah, especially in that tout leagues where innings are so important. You're just piling up innings.
Well, yeah, because bad starts don't hurt you. Dylan Cease got absolutely destroyed. In my house league, that would have been like a minus 55 point outing. And in tout, I think it was minus 8 or something like that. It's just, you're not penalized. So just stack starts. Everybody's league formats are different. And that's the most important thing you can do in terms of your head-to-head points leagues. Figure out where the advantages are in your particular format and exploit them.
It just seems this supply. Do you think it's test my impression here? It seems like I'm more willing to shuffle my pitching than am I hitting at this point because there seems to be more supply of pitching. Again, there are several guys out there on the waiver wire. I got a 12-team league, pretty savvy. We only have 6 reserves, so we're not terribly deep. And we limit to 6 starting pitchers on the roster, so we're keeping starting pitchers in the pool so people can do this. But I think starting pitching is, again, much more interchangeable. I'm more willing to play with it right now than I am with my offense.
Oh, definitely. And you're talking with those roster requirements, automatically pitchers 73 and up for starting pitchers are available.
Yep.
And there are plenty of those guys that merit rostering at different points.
Yeah, especially in a given week, depending on where they're going, where they're playing, and who they're pitching against. That's why you're going to play the streaming game a little bit.
Absolutely.
But you get locked into it. That's difficult to do at times because you get a Kris Bubic on your team and you play him and you're kind of locked into him. But then you see a good starting pitcher with a good week coming up and you go, I can't cuss Kris Bubic from him. You get too attached to the pitchers. That's something you have to try to avoid.
You just have to, understanding your format and what works and what doesn't in your format is, I can't harp on this enough. It is the most critical thing. So you have to look around the league and say, all right, if I cut this guy, am I going to have remorse the rest of the season if somebody picks him up or not? Is this the kind of player that should be on the waiver wire from time to time, or is it somebody that I should just stick with?
Yeah.
I mean, these things, you get a feel for them after you watch your league for a while.
Yeah, you can't look back, though.
In my house league, there's no one ever available of substance.
Yeah.
No. Like, it's a 16-team league.
Yeah.
And we have unlimited we have 5 IL slots that are temporary and 2 season-long IL slots. So you've got up to 7 IL slots.
Is this the dynasty with all the minor league teams?
No, that's the other one. That one, no one period is available. Anybody that hit a home run in the minors yesterday gets picked up today. So, I mean, honestly, we have 1,200 minor leaguers rostered. What are you going to do?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
There's nobody available ever.
You're looking little league at that point.
Well, you can't ever have somebody that is not on a team under contract. So no foreign players, no college or high school players. So it does make the first-year player draft pretty interesting.
My house league, one guy drafted Zach Greinke in high school.
That happens in our league as well.
Yeah, we had to put a rule. We had to stop
stuff. That super dynasty league that's 20 teams and 40 some minor leaguers, and all their building teams have just a whole bunch of minor leaguers on their active roster too. So yeah.
All right. Well, check out the rest of these podcasts where you found this podcast or at insideofbaseball.com. And if you're not familiar with insideofbaseball.com, you want to go and check out the baseball blog. There's a lot of stuff free for non-subscribers, samples of all the emails that we send out to our subscribers every day with player breakdowns. You're going to get a half a dozen player breakdowns every day and some free advice and some the coaches meeting. Half of the coaches meeting is up there as well. So there's a lot of great stuff, even if you're a non-subscriber, but become a subscriber. We work every day to help you win your fantasy baseball championships. Having these types of discussions every day, just the daily email alone is worth the price of admission, where you're getting these breakdowns of dozens of players every day and keep you up to date. So you can do one email and get caught up and get your league, get your team as pumped as it can be going forward. And watch out for all these changes, right? Because the end of April, we get into May, we get into June, things are going to change considerably. Got to stay on top of things.
100%. And, we're going to start over the next couple of weeks. We're going to start getting some data that actually does mean a lot. So yeah, it's just going to get more interesting from here.
All right, everybody have some fun and enjoy your baseball. And I got to play the out music. I always blow the out music part. All right, Skylar, good to talk to you.
Likewise, my friend. Talk to you soon.
Let's go. Oh, yeah. Let's go.